Hello everyone, and welcome back to Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we're having a look at the Kremlin again, because the Kremlin has been buffed in the last upgrade, and there were a couple of interesting things there, so I wanted to see if that changes anything around the Kremlin. So the two significant things we're talking about here is the increase in shell penetration and the increase in turret survivability. Because the role where I'm seeing the Kremlin as intended is an interesting one, and I have been struggling quite a bit to to make this ship work. I wasn't a huge fan of this thing. So what is the role of the Kremlin? What is the intended role of the Kremlin? I think it's becoming much more clear now with this buff that she is intended to be a mid-range brawler, which is a weird thing to be, but she doesn't have the armor of the Großer Kurfürst, but she still has pretty good armor. And she has, specifically around bow and stern, she's got excellent armor. And she's also got the legendary module to increase that armor. And she doesn't have the range. So, and much more significantly, she also doesn't have the penetration on the armor-piercing shells, because these armor-piercing shells are falling a little flat, in my opinion, compared to other ships at tier. Now, unfortunately, we do not know the initial armor-piercing penetration values of the Kremlin. But let's start looking at some statistics about the Kremlin. So let's begin with the dispersion, as that is something that we actually know, thanks to the generous folks at the CIC who have determined all these things. So the Kremlin has a very trollish dispersion. She actually has, let me switch to another view here. She actually has the worst maximum dispersion per tier in tier 10 battleships, but she has also the best minimum dispersion, which means that this kind of confirms what we're seeing in game. The dispersion is trollish. You either get the shells all over the place or you get them on target, but you never know what it's going to be before you get there. So why are we looking at the dispersion? Because of the change in turret survivability. Why do you care about turret survivability? Let's have a brief look at the ship setup. Because module-wise, you can put the main battery mod 2 into slot 1. Which reduces the main battery survivability, but it also reduces the main battery reload time. And that's, for me, where the intent comes in, because why else would you increase the main battery survivability by such a massive amount, if not to compensate for the fact that you would be flying this module, and you could always compensate with the armament modification 1. No one's going to do that because it's garbage, but you could. But that collides with the legendary module, which gives us also 15% main battery survivability, which isn't as the same as the other one, but it's part of it. So together with the legendary module, and we honestly don't need the legendary module anymore at all, because the 15% bow and deck armor isn't going to make an awful lot of difference because she's still going to be penetrated regardless, and she now has such a high survivability that it shouldn't matter to use main battery mod 2. Now the counter argument to that would be, oh yes, but Kremlin has the worst possible dispersion in tier 10. Why don't you use the main battery mod 3? So let's have a quick look at the rationale, because the Kremlin doesn't just have the modules. The Kremlin also has a ship skill. And that ship skill is the Precise Aiming 3, which increases the main gun accuracy by 45%. I'm translating that it reduces the dispersion by 45%. So I don't know if this is just minimum or maximum dispersion or both, but let's assume both. And let's see what happens when we apply this and how this compares to the module, because you get 4 charges of that you can boost up to 5 if you're so inclined, and together with the marksman skill, you can use that quite a bit. So let's have a look at some numbers. So the base dispersion of the Kremlin is between 90 and 456 meters. vertical dispersion is standard at 64. So we don't need to really look at that too much. Now, if we put the module in there, that's a 7% increase, which means that the minimum dispersion goes back to 83 and the maximum dispersion goes to 424. That is still the worst dispersion in tier 10. She still has a worse dispersion than the Großer Kurfürst at max. Now, it is RNG, so she can be precise if she wants to, but she can also be an absolute shotgun. If we use the skill, on the other hand, we would get the minimum dispersion down to 49 and the maximum dispersion down to 250, which is significantly more of an improvement. Now, if we were to use both, as in we've got the skill active and the module, the additional reduction that we're seeing is not an awful lot. So with the module and the skill, we would have a reduction of 17 meters on the maximum dispersion. So you can see it here in the graph. The module, the red bar by itself, is not doing an awful lot. It's not going to make her. It's not going to get her even close to the Großer Kurfürst in terms of dispersion. And but if you enable the skill, if you've got the skill running, that's when the dispersion gets better. And there, the impact of the module again is actually even less because of the initial reduction. So in absolute values, the 7% once the module is active is actually not an awful lot. So that's the rationale where I say probably reload. Now, are you going to get more shots out with the reload mod? Let's have a look at what the reload mod does. So with the reload mod with the reload module in slot 1, we have a reload time of 22 seconds. Without it, let's quickly put her into comparison so we can have a look. Doesn't matter what we compare her with, we're just after the numbers. So a base reload would be 24 seconds. So if we are using the elite bonus for main battery reload and the reload module in slot 1, and that gets us down to 22.12 seconds. Now if we were to not use that, then we would be at 23 seconds. So it effectively shaves a second off the reload. That's pretty much what it is going to do. And that means you are, together with the consumables and everything, you are just going to get a little bit, not necessarily an awful lot more shells per battle downrange, but you get them downrange a little bit quicker. And you get a little bit more, out of it, right? So that's, in my opinion, how the ship's intended to be built, because that is the one thing that makes sense. Now, the second value, pull that over again. The second value that that was updated is she received 4% more penetration power on the armor piercing. Now here it gets a little fishy because we don't know an awful lot about this. We do know that there is an initial penetration power value, and my theory at this point is that this is the amount of armor plating that a shell can get through. We don't know by how much it reduces over time. And we don't know what the initial shell penetration value for the Kremlin is, because we've asked, but we were told that this is not something that we get to know. We do not know, however, what the initial penetration value for the Yamato is, because it was in the patch notes for 5.2, I believe. So the Yamato's initial penetration power is 506. So let's make two assumptions here. The first assumption would be that at maximum range, the penetration power gets reduced by 50%. It's purely an assumption. I don't know that, right? But let's assume that. So at 50%, the Yamato would still be able to punch through 253 millimeters of armor, which means she would probably she would probably semi-pen most belts at max range, but she might still be getting through some of the deck armors. Now we know that the Kremlin has a lower, or we don't know that, but we assume that the Kremlin has a lower initial penetration value because, just from observation. So let's assume an initial penetration of 490 millimeters of steel. That would go down to 245 at the, again, assumed 50% at max range. So the 4% improvement here would give us 19.6 more millimeters of penetration at muzzle. The problem is, obviously, we're not going to hit anything at that range because that's when the shell comes out. So again, running on our assumption here of 50%, at max range, we would get an additional penetration of 9.8 millimeters, which is not an awful lot. So what I'm saying is the 4% armor piercing penetration is nice, but I'm not sure it's going to make a huge difference. So now that we've gotten the numbers out of the way, let's I will test once more the Kremlin, and then I think I'll just leave it be and see if things got any better. So I played a couple of games in the Kremlin just to test out post 5.5 upgrade if, in my opinion, she can now fit into this role of slightly ahead of the battleship line brawler. Not brawler as in großer Kurfürst, but playing slightly ahead of the battleship line with the additional damage control and with the now improved, more fast-firing guns and with the slightly improved penetration. In the first game, we are playing base capture on Atlantic against Colombo, Kremlin, Yamato, Smolensk, Colbert, Des Moines, and a single Shimakaze. Although the Shima is teamed up with the Colombo and the Kremlin. Atlantic, not my favorite map really, but a pleasant lack of Shimakazes in this game. So just a single Shima, the rest is mostly cruisers and stuff. So we are spawning together with, let's see what we've got. We've got a Goliath and a Worcester. Somebody very brave going out in the Goliath. And I seem to have been noticed. So hello, welcome. You're on YouTube. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to play the Kremlin as I think she was intended. So we're not rushing in, because the Kremlin is has an extremely hard time defending herself from things like destroyers, and but we are going to be kind of sticking with the cruisers here and trying to play a mid-range sort of push position, slightly ahead of where you would traditionally find things like Vermonts or Yamatos, a bit more aggressive, just using the armor and our now completely indestructible turrets. I'm not sure where the Goliath is going. Worcester is pushing this way, so Goliath is making... Okay, I'm spotted. So that's either the destroyer or one of the cruisers, but they're probably somewhere over there. So I'm just like, let's be careful. It's not that one. That's a Yamato. But I am going into... Oh, it's a Des Moines, yeah. Okay, Des Moines is obviously in a position. So I'm switching on the precise aiming. Des Moines is not going to give you broadside. And that wasn't too bad, and probably shot some of his guns off. I am playing this, by the way, without armor piercing cap shell. So because again, this skill is hard to come by. So there's also Colbert over there, but we should be able to outrange a Des Moines, and the Des Moines obviously, and there's also Shima over there, but he's quite far away. So the Des Moines is obviously going defensive. There's not an awful lot I'm going to be able to do about that thing, but at this range. I'm not sure if at this range the bow and deck armor are actually going to hold up against 203mm. Probably. See if I can get another shot out at the Des Moines, but it's about time to use the first heal at this point and push a little bit more, because the rest of the battleships has caught up, so we don't want to be that far back. There's Colbert. Now Colbert obviously is going to try and burn me down, because that's what he does. That's what Colberts are for. But I have the broadside of a Colbert. He is in a turn because he's in the fight with a Goliath and has lost some hit points. So is he going to turn around? No, he isn't, but he is starting to shoot at me. So shots out, and Colbert is obviously now going defensive because he's not an idiot. And that's 2 overpens, great, and a full pen. Okay, well. I'm now getting AP spammed by the Des Moines on the other side, and Colbert is obviously going to try and burn me down, so I'm going to start using the damage control. And I need to push a little bit, because, Colbert can just keep doing that. If I'm not getting any closer, not much is going to happen, because, again, dispersion. So, but now I've got almost broadside, but he turns in the last moment and would have hoped for a citadel, but there was no citadel. There were some Yamato shots coming in from the side, so now I'm starting to running relatively low on hit points. And yeah, Colbert is obviously HE spamming me and trying to burn me down into oblivion. Is he going to go in a full turn? No, he isn't. So we'll assume that he's not reversing and that he keeps going forward. But at this point, yeah, I'm not going to get the Colbert killed. Not with these guns unless I have the precise aim up or he gives me broadside. So I'm gonna have to back off a little bit and try to get outside his range. But yeah, he's obviously HE spamming me into oblivion. Then there's not an awful lot I can do about it in the Kremlin because Colbert is a relatively mobile cruiser, and as long as he plays from long range, there's not an awful lot I can do. So yeah, and the dispersion says nope. Even though the I think he just got out of range at that point, and even though the module was up, the precise aiming skill was up, dispersion said no. But you can get with this setup, you can get 2 salvos in with the module active, which is also quite significant because you definitely want to make the most out of the not module skill, the most out of the precise aiming skill. So far we haven't done an awful lot. There's the Colbert got spotted again now. I've got his broadside. So shots out, but he is already kiting away. So these are going to miss. And yeah, the general dispersion is not good enough to get them on target against a rapidly maneuvering cruiser. So I am going to have to damage control that single fire because I'm running out of hit points here. And I'm not sure what the Colbert is doing, but there comes some Yamato shells in. I was lucky, and I believe I've missed again. So against a maneuvering light cruiser, you're going to struggle. But that's true not just for the Kremlin. That's true for pretty much everything else. But yeah, we haven't done an awful lot, honestly. Except for tanking and burning through our hit points. So there's Yamato, and Goliath is smoking me up. Yay! Team play. So let's see what we can do with this improved penetration against the Yamato. Slow down so we can actually get into the... Yeah, that wasn't too bad. We can get into the smoke screen, and he is burning. He's going after Goliath. So I'm going to get into the smoke that the Goliath has set for me there. Thank you very much. And I'm actually going undetected. Let's see if we can get a couple more shots out at the Yamato. So that wasn't terrible. And another salvo. Let's see if we can repeat that. No, these were just mostly semi-pens, I think. So it looks like, yeah, once again, mid-range is where we need to be. So like 10 kilometers or so. Unfortunately, I don't have enough health. And that was lucky that the Yamato didn't take me out there. But Yamato's not dead. Hello, Mr. Smolensk. We are 2 kills ahead, so unless we're getting capped out, which I don't think they have the time for, I think they're not going to win by capping. So a couple of shots out at the Smolensk. Let's see if we can make something happen against that thing. And full pens. Well, at least not over pens. So it feels a little better. It might just be an impression, but it feels like the shots are. Can we survive this? And the Goliath smokes me up again. No, Smolensk gets me, but that's okay. We're winning on points anyway. So it feels a little better, but all in all, the mid-range thing is really, really hard in this ship because you're sort of struggling to you're drawing a lot of fire and you don't have the tankiness of a Kurfürst. At the same time, you also can't really play at close range that well, especially against more mobile ships, which can get quite annoying. So let's try a second game and just see if that was a one-off. So in this game, we're playing against Vermont, Freddy Ibuki, Shimakaze and Yugumo, and its epicenter on chain. Same style. I'm going to go kind of mid-range. Not going to go into brawling range because against destroyers, again, Kremlin is utterly helpless because the dispersion of the main guns means you're never going to get sufficient amount of HE on target to defend yourself, and the secondaries aren't great. She doesn't have auto secondaries, so yeah, that's another problem with the mid-range setup. You kind of really have to keep an eye out that you're not running into torpedoes. Now, she did get, I think, her torpedo protection buffed a little bit, but, you know, It's a nice little buff, and it once again reaffirms that how this ship's, I think, meant to be played. I'm just not convinced that it's very good at it. That is sort of where I'm coming from. Anyway, let's get ourselves into the outer ring and see what we can do from over there. We do have cruisers to shoot, and we do have 2 battleships to shoot. Obviously, we don't want to go anywhere near the center ring, because that's where the destroyers are going to be. And we're going to have to be a little bit careful with the torpedoes. Yeah. I don't think I've played the Sovietsky Soyuz at tier 9. And I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, if it's a good ship to play at tier 9. But I'm really just curious to know if there's a reason. I've heard pretty dreadful things about the tier 8. So I just want to know if there's a reason to actually play this thing. We're obviously spotted because the enemy destroyers are in the center cup, as we can see from it being flipped. But we do want to be inside the outer ring, because the range on the Kremlin is lackluster. It's really too short. Okay, Ibuki. That's a good target. Now is he beaching? Okay, precise aim up. He looks to have beached. Shots out, and see what we can do something about the Ibuki. And that's 2 hits, 2 full pens. Disappointing. Could have been a lot more. There's Shimakaze, and there's also Vermont. There's some torpedoes coming around. Shima is smoking up, and I just want to see if I can get another salvo out at the Ibuki. Unfortunately, I've waited a little bit too long, so my precise aim is now on cooldown. That's just the bot gearing. Not really that interested in it. And 4 hits, 4 full pens. Yes, it's nice, but that's a Japanese cruiser. And these are really, really big guns. I would have assumed a little bit more than that. Okay, there come the obvious Shima torps. That's why I'm already in reverse. And we're going to start unloading at the Vermont and see if we can do something about that thing from over there. Shots out while we're dodging torpedoes. Yeah, I think that was 2 bounces, 1 semi-pen and 1 full pen. So against Vermont, something like Vermont at max range, even with the improved penetration, she just didn't do anything. So that was not an awful lot happening. Shimakaze is sitting reasonably still there. I might try to get a shot off, and at range that might actually penetrate if I can manage to hit the Shima, but that looks like that was a no. So we're going back to, we're getting shot at by Freddy as well. We're going back to probably a gun duel with the Vermont, unless I get one of the cruisers to shoot at. So Vermont's reversing, precise aim up, shots out, and we'll see what that does against the Vermont. And that was nothing. 1 hit and 1 bounce. Yeah, and then meanwhile I am getting absolutely hammered by these 2 while I'm in the turn to relocate into a better position. But yeah, see, that's the problem, right? I'm shooting at something like a Vermont at 13 kilometers. Now I know that, I think Sly said that the Kremlin works really well if you use manual aim. At these ranges I probably wouldn't, but as you can see I'm consistently bouncing shells off the Vermont. So at 13-14 kilometers she can't get anything done against harder targets. And that for me is sort of the problem that I have with the Kremlin, that you need to play way more ahead, way more forward than is comfortable. The ship's huge, and the guns just without the armor-piercing cap shell just don't perform as they should. At closer ranges, when you can actually aim at the places you want to aim, that might actually work better. But if you're hitting something like at this range in a Yamato, I would have been doing more damage against that Vermont significantly. So I just don't see the point of the Kremlin. Right? She's kind of halfway between a German and a Japanese battleship. In that she doesn't have the range to play the first half of the battle from the rear. And then she doesn't have the hit points remaining to play the second half of the battle close up. That's kind of where my problem lies. Because she doesn't have sufficient armor to do something. And yeah, my team's going down. We're not holding any of the capture circles. I'm about to eat a whole bunch of Shima torps. There's not an awful lot I can do about that. And the Freddy obviously does huge amounts of damage against me. And I'm not just able to to do anything about that Vermont in return. Hello, Shima. Yeah, it's fine. We lost that one anyway. There was no chance we were ever going to win this. So, yeah, see, that's kind of my problem with the Kremlin. And I don't think, at least not for me, I don't think the buff in 5.5 has changed that. I think the style that she's meant to play just doesn't work. I don't even know how to fix this ship, honestly. I don't have a great idea unless you massively increase the penetration power of these guns or make her a lot more precise and do away with this huge trollish base dispersion, such that you can, even though the penetration is relatively low, that you can get all the shells on target reliably. That would be something. Maybe that she would work, but as it stands, I would still not recommend going for the Kremlin. If you want a brawler, get a German one. If you want something long range, get a Vermont or get a Yamato. And hell, you can even get Monty, and Monty's got better base dispersion than this thing. But yeah, Kremlin doesn't do it for me. So anyway, that's that just as an update. And I think I'm now going to stop playing the Kremlin. So that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.